So if you ask me, this is a whole new platform, this is a new era, we're living in the future, and it starts now. Hey there, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for being here. Well, Apple just had WWDC 2023, and I think it was the most exciting event they've had in a long time. Let me tell you why. So let's do a quick overview of what they announced. They announced a few new products that I honestly was just kind of, meh about. But they also announced one that I think is literally going to be life-changing for certain groups of people. They also talked about new versions of their operating systems, such as macOS 10 Sonoma and iOS 17. There were a lot of new features. There were some that were pretty cool, and I'm kind of looking forward to, but there were a couple that I'm thinking, I might turn that off right away. And there were a couple features that I most definitely think will be standard. They will be copied by other manufacturers. So let's just do a brief overview of the things that they announced. Alright, the first thing that they announced was a 15-inch MacBook Air. They're claiming up to 18 hours of battery life. It's going to be powered by the M2 chip. You can get up to 24 gigs of RAM and up to 2 terabytes of storage. This one is honestly one that I just sort of felt indifferent about because I'm not a big fan of the lack of ports on a MacBook Air, and I think that the MacBook Pro is pretty darn thin anyway. So if it were me, I would probably opt for a MacBook Pro anyway. Next, they announced a Mac Studio powered by the M2. They talked about all the bazillion streams of 8K that the thing can handle, and to be honest, I was just kind of like, meh, because I'm not really in the market for one of those right now. Again, if it were me, I think I would opt for a MacBook Pro. Or possibly a Mac Pro, which is the next thing that they announced. So there's now a new Mac Pro powered by the M2 Ultra chip, and this is their desktop professional computer setup. One thing that's pretty cool about the new Mac Pro is that you can set it upright or mount it horizontally on a rack. That could definitely be handy for places that already have servers or maybe sound equipment in racks. They also showed off iOS 17, which actually looks pretty cool. There's a couple of features that I thought were really nice. So one of the new features is a standby mode. So what happens is you put your phone down in a horizontal position on your charger, and it will turn the screen to the side and almost turn it into an Echo Show, but it's going to be powered by Siri instead of She Who Shall Not Be Named by Amazon. Another new feature was full screen wallpapers for contacts. So when someone calls you, instead of this little picture, you can have a big wallpaper, either an emoji or some picture that you customize, and it'll show that all over your whole screen when someone calls you. Another new feature is live voicemail. The idea here is that you will be able to hear someone talking as they are leaving the message. So this is basically like old school answering machines. In the 90s, people used to have their home phones connected to an answering machine, and when someone called, if they didn't recognize the number, they would let the machine get it, and then they could hear the person talking as they're leaving a message. If it's someone that you wanted to talk to, you could pick it up. This is going to allow for that very same thing. iOS 17 also has a new safety feature called check-in. The idea here is that the phone can anticipate how long it should take you to reach a destination. And so if you don't get there in a certain amount of time, it can give you a message to ask you if you want to extend that time. And if you don't reply, it can alert emergency services for you. So imagine you get out of work after dark and you don't make it home when Siri expects you to, or if you stop for a long time. The phone can ask you if you want to extend that time. If you don't respond, it can alert emergency services for you. They also added a feature to AirDrop called Name Drop, and the idea is that you can swap contact information with somebody easily just by getting your phones close to each other. There's also a new secured app for journals, And I think this is pretty cool because I've been using the Notes app to keep some journals. I really like the idea of, for private things, being able to have it encrypted and password protected. They also added a feature to allow you to share passwords and passkeys with other people, and it'll all be synced by keychain through iCloud. watchOS got some new features too. One of those is topographic maps. That is a map that shows elevation. Also, they've added waypoints so you can see where the last spot is that you got cell phone service from your carrier, and they will also show you waypoints of spots where you can make an emergency call if you had to. One of the features that I think I will immediately turn off is the fact that you will no longer have to say "hey" before the name of Siri. That is one of the most annoying things I find about the Alexa platform. I don't like the fact that you don't have to say "hey," they just say the name, and if you're watching some kind of video where they're talking about it, then it triggers it and it drives me nuts. So I do hope that we can turn that feature off. So I personally still want to have to say "hey" before the name so it doesn't accidentally trigger it all the time. AirPods have a really cool new feature that I definitely think will be copied, and that is a new adaptive audio mode. If you put on a pair of headphones or earbuds, a lot of them have a pass-through mode. The idea is the microphones pick up sound and passes it through to your ears through the little speakers. That way you can have situational awareness. If there's someone coming up behind you, you can hear their footsteps. If there's a car honking their horn, you'll hear the horn. Things like that. Great for taking a walk outside. A lot of headphones and earbuds also have active noise cancellation. The idea being that they will actively cancel out and reduce steady noises from things like planes and leaf blowers, things like that. Well, the new adaptive audio feature will give you the best of both worlds. If you're taking a walk and you're walking by a lawnmower, it'll reduce that noise, but if someone is coming up behind you on a bike and says "excuse me" or rings a bell or something like that, you'll be able to still hear them, giving you that situational awareness that can keep you safe while walking in public, while simultaneously removing the droning noises that you don't want to hear. And the final thing that they announced was a one more thing. And this truly, in my opinion, was the first thing in years and maybe over a decade that really deserves that line, "one more thing." If you're not familiar with this line, this is something that Steve Jobs made famous. What he did was he strung out the presentation over time. He started with things like how much money they made in the quarter and that kind of stuff, and announcing a few different things along the way, and it almost seemed like the presentation was over, and then he said, "but we have one more thing."
Wait a minute, there is one more thing I forgot about. We'll see y'all soon. Thanks. But we do have one more thing. So thank you. But there is one last thing I'd like to talk to you about today. So, this is what we're up to today, and I'm really glad you liked everything. But there is one more thing.
iPhone, it was something that a lot of people were just insanely excited about, and it really did make a huge difference. Because if it wasn't for the iPhone, we probably wouldn't have modern Androids. Up until then, the state-of-the-art for smartphones were Blackberries. And I'm sorry, but as addictive as those were for a lot of people back then, including former President Barack Obama, he really seemed to love his Blackberry because you'd see him with it a lot. However, the iPhone, in my opinion, is what made the smartphone market explode. So the WWDC 2023 one more thing was Apple Vision Pro. This is the rumored VR/AR headset. And I've watched several videos about this from different creators, Meet Kevin doesn't seem very excited. Marquez Brownlee doesn't seem to be very excited. But iJustine seems to be just over the moon excited about this, and I am with her. I truly believe that this is the start of a whole new platform that will be copied, and it will be literally life-changing for certain groups of people. Let me give you a few examples, but first let me tell you just a little bit about this thing. If you've seen VR headsets before, they kind of look like goggles from the outside, but they have a screen on the inside that the person wearing them is looking at. Sometimes that screen is a phone, like in the case of the Galaxy Note that I had. It had a little USB-C connector in there. You would plug it in and then kind of flip it closed, and you're looking at the Samsung Note screen. In this case, it has two dedicated displays, one for each eye, on the inside that are curved, and both have more pixels than a 4K screen. It also has cameras on the inside that are looking at your eyes, and it can actually use your eyes to authenticate you because your irises and the other things in your eyes are as unique as your fingerprints. So you put this thing on and it just knows that it's you. It also has a screen on the outside of it. So if you're totally immersed in something and someone walks in the room, they'll see an animation on the outside. But if you want to talk to somebody, it can actually use the cameras on the inside and then display your eyes on the outside, so it looks to the person like they're looking at you in the eyes. Some people are saying that it feels kind of creepy. I don't know. It also has a button and a knob they're calling the digital crown, just like the digital crown on the watch, on the outside of it. It has cameras and microphones on the outside, and it also has little speakers so you can hear things through it. I can imagine all kinds of instances where this thing is going to be a game changer. Now, I know these things are niche use cases, but just let me list a few that I've thought of. Now, this thing is a metal housing. Imagine if you could have a little rechargeable thermal camera that could stick magnetically to the thing and then display what it's seeing and overlay it onto the screen on the inside. A firefighter could put it on. Their eyes would be protected from the smoke because they're totally enclosed in this thing, but also they could look around and see, oh, okay, it's cooler over there, but it's warmer over there, and they could figure out which way to go to more effectively fight the fire. Imagine a trade school or university with a classroom full of young people wearing these things and seeing what the professor is showing them. In a trade school, the instructor could be wearing one of these things and showing, okay, this is how you solder, you're going to touch it here, you're going to do this and that, and the students would be wearing it and they could see exactly what the professor or instructor is looking at. Now think about this. How about rural places or third world countries that don't have access to really highly trained specialists? Imagine a village in a third world country where there are some people that need a surgery, but it's a really highly specific surgery. Maybe there's some highly specialized surgeon in Chicago or Seattle that could put on one of these headsets. The local doctor could put on a headset, and then that specialized surgeon could direct them and say, oh yeah, make a 3mm cut right there. Right here? Oh no, down a little bit lower. Right here? Yeah, right there. Okay. That could be a huge game changer and literally a lifesaver. The big one for me was thinking about all the ways that this thing could benefit people with disabilities. I plan on making a whole separate video just about this, but suffice it to say, this thing could be majorly life-changing for blind people, deaf people, people with other disabilities. I just think this thing could literally be a game changer for a lot of different niche groups of people. I don't know what the widespread, like everybody is using a particular app or use case, but I can just see this group needing it for this group needing it for this group needing it for this. And there are going to be all these apps coming out just like they did for the smartphone, just like they did for the personal computer. I mean, imagine if we just had personal computers where you didn't have third-party companies making apps. You didn't have like Adobe making Photoshop or Lightroom or things like that. And you didn't have Microsoft making a word processor or a database or whatever, and you just were relying on the company that made the computer to make whatever apps. I think what we're seeing now with just Apple's vision for it is going to be just hugely expanded by third-party apps. So if you ask me, this is a whole new platform, this is a new era, we're living in the future, and it starts now. Thank you so much for watching the video. I really appreciate it. Please talk to me down in the comments, and I will see you next time. They're claiming up to 18 hours of battery life. You can get up to up to 18 hours of battery life. It's going to be powered by an M2 chip. You can get up to 24 gigs of RAM and up to 2 terabytes. The 18 hours of battery life. My stomach's making noise. Guess I'm getting hungry. So one of the new features is a standby mode. So when you put your phone down on a charger in a horizontal position, it kind of turns it in your app for journals, which I think is really cool because I've been using the Notes app to do